Spurgeon here with RevZilla TV to talk to you today about R&G Frame Sliders available at RevZilla.com. R&G Frame Sliders are going to protect your bike in the event of a crash. What I like about R&G is they're going to have a wider range of applications, so whether you're riding a street bike, a sport bike, or something in between, there's probably going to be an application out there that fits your motorcycle. To figure out what works for your bike, make sure you're using our bike finder. Punch in your bike's information and you'll get the kit that's specifically matched up with your bike. Once you get the right kit for your bike, installation is going to be a breeze. On our Beard scale of difficulty for install, it's really going to be a 1 out of 3. It's not going to be a heavy lift, and it's going to give you everything you need to do the job. We're going to talk more about installation at the end. For right now, I want to jump into what sets R&G frame sliders apart from other frame sliders on the market. R&G is a name synonymous with the racing world. They spend a lot of time and money sponsoring track days, track events, and going to track schools. They take all the knowledge that they learn and then they put that knowledge back into their product. The one thing that I want to hit on before we really dive into the meat and potatoes is that these are frame sliders. These are designed to protect your frame in the event of a crash. One of the most common questions we get here at RevZilla is, hey, I'm looking for something to protect my fairings. Yes, some of these kits will have the adverse effect of protecting your fairing if you drop it over, but that's not what they're designed to do. Your fairing is a relatively cheap fix when compared to having to replace an entire bike because you've damaged the frame. So some of these kits are actually going to be hidden behind your fairings depending on your bike. So just keep in mind, these are not necessarily designed as fairing protectors. With that being said, these are designed to keep your bike safe, and in the end, that's what they do really well. They do that in the actual design of the components. So first and foremost, the hardware. The steel that's used in these is a de-embrittled steel. De-embrittled steel flexes and bends as opposed to crack. So when it hits the ground, it's going to bend and flex, acting almost as a suspension for your crash. It also allows you to replace the components individually easier. So once you're done crashing and this kind of flexes off, you can pull this off, you can replace just the part that you need to, put it all back together, and get back out and ride. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is the actual slider itself. It's a polyethylene slider, and they went with polyethylene because it has a high friction rate. So what this does, while the actual hardware acts as a suspension, the slider acts as your brakes. It's going to wear down and stop the bike in the event of a crash. So these two components work really nicely together. The slider itself is designed into two shapes. You have your standard round slider, and then over here we're going to have the arrow slider. Both are going to work exactly the same, they're just different shapes, and depending on what bike you have, it depends on what kit you're going to get. That's where the bike finder comes into play in getting the kit that's right for your bike. So we're going to set this down over here. The one on my right hand, again, the arrow setup, it's going to come with all the hardware you need, including these cool little end caps. So really attention to detail that we see from R&G. Once you have your bolt placed in there and you assemble the whole thing, little end caps go in, finishes off the product really nicely. This one is for a Ducati Diaval, and you're going to see it's a little bit longer because there's no fairing on a Diaval. This would sit out from the actual frame itself. On my left-hand side, you're going to notice that this one is a little bit shorter. This is for a Ducati 848, and it's much more narrow. Like we talked about earlier, this is going to sit underneath your fairing. So it attaches to the frame underneath the fairing. In the event of a crash, it's going to go down, it's going to slide along your fairing and eventually wear through the frame slider, keeping your bike and your frame safe, but you'll have to replace the fairings after a crash. Set that one down over here. In the middle, we're going to have one that's going to be for a Triumph Thruxton Scrambler Bonneville T100. Like I talked about in the beginning, R&G makes a wider range of products for a wide range of motorcycles. And that's what I love. It's going to include all the hardware you need for installation, and it's going to hit bikes from cruisers to cafe racers to full-on sport bikes. And everything you need to install this will come included, from brackets to screws to sliders. So it's all a one-stop shop. That takes us right into installation. So with install on this, it's really a 1 out of 3 on our Beard scale of difficulty. It's all a bolt-on application. It's something you're going to be able to tackle in about 2 hours in your garage. The only hesitation you might have is if you're looking at a kit for your bike, you have a full-faired sport bike and it's a cut kit. A lot of guys get really intimidated with having to cut their fairings. If it really bothers you, always take it to a professional mechanic, have them cut the fairing for you and install it. But I will say I've seen many guys cut their own fairings. If you take your time, use the right tools and follow the instructions, you'll be able to do it yourself. I have faith in you, okay? With that all wrapped up here, I like the R&G kits. Mainly, I like the fact that they're gonna give you something that's gonna work for any bike in your garage. My VFR, my Bonneville, even some of my older bikes, they're gonna have something that's gonna work for any of the applications. There's a lot of guys out there using R&G products on their motorcycles. So if you wanna hear more about what other riders have to say, click below. Read what other riders like and what they don't like about the R&G product. If you've got more questions for us directly, get on the phone and give us a call. 877-792-9455. We'll put you on the phone with the Gear Geek, or type out an email, cs@RevZilla.com. This has been our conversation on the R&G Frame Sliders. I'm Spurgeon. Enjoy the ride.